And to talk about the newly declared ceasefire and what it means for the region, I'm now joined by James Gelvin. He is professor of Middle East history at the University of California, Los Angeles. Welcome back to the show. Want to ask you, what do you make of this newest 72-hour ceasefire? It's the longest so far. We saw a 12-hour one, a 24-hour one. Are you optimistic that this can maybe lead to something more?
Well, I don't think we're going to incrementally build up to a long-term truce. I don't think that's what's going on at all. I think that there were several factors that fed into this. I mean, first of all, Hamas is winning the propaganda war internationally. And so therefore, why blow that? So Hamas would certainly sign on to something like this. Israel is badly losing the propaganda war internationally, badly losing it. So Israel itself has something at stake in a humanitarian ceasefire, as well as insulting the American Secretary of State a week ago when he tried to get a 7-day ceasefire. And then, of course, there are the Egyptians who are playing their own game. What the Egyptians are attempting to do is to remain on top as a regional player, as the regional player that everybody has to come to, and yet at the same time to allow Israel to degrade Hamas as much as possible. This without, of course, upsetting too many of the Egyptian population, which, of course, is very pro-Palestinian.
Well, until just a few hours ago, both Israel and Hamas were adamant about agreeing to any kind of ceasefire. So what happened? And then you also have the U.S. Secretary of State having some almost kind words in terms of Israel.
Well, you have a very interesting thing going on, which is that for the first time, Netanyahu has defined what the war's goals are. It had been very, very vague before. It had been degrading Hamas, something along those lines. Now it's very explicit, getting rid of the tunnels, period. Okay. Once they get rid of the tunnels, Netanyahu has said, that's it, the war is over, that we've accomplished our war aims, we can get out. What Hamas is saying is that once the Israelis get out, then what we can begin to do is to talk about other things, such as a long-term hudna, a long-term truce, as well as opening up the border crossing with Egypt. So I think those are the things that are going on right now.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said earlier today that this is an opportunity, not the end in terms of that ceasefire. What needs to happen now? A lot of people meeting in Cairo.
Well, what needs to happen now, I think, is that the demand of Hamas for a easing of the blockade has got to be met in some way. The first Egyptian suggestion for ceasefire was a replay of its suggestion for ceasefire in 2012. The Israelis violated the terms of that by not easing the blockade of Gaza. So therefore, what Hamas simply wants at this point is an end to the blockade, or at least an easing of the blockade, so that they can maintain some facade of governance there.
The U.S. publicly came out with its strongest words yet to that latest attack on a UN school. And the UN also, as you know, has had a lot of harsh words directed to Israel. Do you think that had anything to do with this ceasefire agreement?
I think it certainly did. I think that, along with the very, very high casualty rate, the disproportionate casualty rate among Palestinians versus Israelis, the international outcry of marches everywhere from Paris to Dublin against the Israeli actions. And of course, the fact that the Israelis are still smarting under the American reaction to their very impolitic attacks on John Kerry.
All right, James Gelvin, thank you so much for joining us from UCLA. We appreciate your time as always.